Are you looking for a listing presentation? What we're talking about is when you meet with a seller to ask them to hire you to sell their home, are you looking for the words that you're going to have when you're out there and also the structure of that presentation? If you are, you're in the right place. Let's talk about it. Hi, I'm Mike Cerrone with Two Listings Per Month. And in this call, we're going to talk about our 20-minute, seven-step listing presentation. All right, so we got 7 steps we're going to work through in the listing presentation. Our goal is to get it done in 20 minutes. If our seller wants to get it done quick, we can get it done quickly for them. All right, so I'm going to walk through this. We'll go pretty quick. It's pretty easy. And it's a lot of fun, and it's been very successful. So let's go ahead and give you the 7 steps real quick, and then we'll dive into each. Here are, first of all, before I actually do that, let me tell you something you need to know. There are 2 philosophies on listing presentations, either a 1-step or a 2-step. And what I mean by that is that you either go out one time and get the listing, that's a 1-step, or a 2-step, which is you go out one time, gather information, go back and do your research, and then you go meet with the sellers a second time for the actual presentation to get hired. So in my world, I've always gone with a 1-step presentation. I go out there, I meet with them, I get a signature, and then if not, and then the other approach, though, is again, it's 2 steps. You go out there and you meet with them, get the information, and then go back out on a second step. Go ahead and tell me in the comments below, which do you prefer to do, 1-step or 2-step? I'm going to give you an advanced thing because I just thought of it. Maybe it's helpful. Usually I do a 1-step, but really smart agents will often do a 2-step. Here's what I mean. A lot of agents like to be the last agent that the seller meets with, because as long as your presentation is as good as everybody else, they're going to hire you because they're done with the process. Somebody who goes first has to really be strong on closing to get that appointment and to get that signed listing agreement. And if you're not, then you can always move to a 2-step. So if you get in there and you start talking with the seller and they say, yeah, I'm going to meet with so-and-so tomorrow for another listing presentation, you can reverse this and turn it into a 2-step where you say, you know what, that's awesome. Let me gather some information today, and I'm going to come back and meet with you in 2 days with my final report. And they can 2-step around. I've had people do that to me, believe it or not, and they've been successful. So that is an idea of how to use 2-step. But other than that, I typically recommend the 1-step. Whew. Now let's get into what the 7 steps are of this 7-step listing presentation. All right, number 1 is a tour. Number 2 is the agenda and motivation. Number 3 is price. Number 4 is days in market. Number 5 is net sheet. Number 6 is marketing plan. And number 7 is decision. So if you like to take notes, there they are. I'll give it to you real quick again. 1 is the tour. 2 is agenda and motivation. 3 is price. 4 is days in market or days on market, depending on what your MLS says. And number 5 is net sheet. Number 6 is marketing plan. And number 7 is decision. If you have that lined up in your head, you kind of know where you're going in this process, so that, because you're going to get taken off track. You're going to ask questions and the seller's going to go one way, or you may go another way. You got to have a way to come back to center and keep going on track to where you want, which is a signed listing agreement, that decision. All right, let's go through each step a little bit more in depth. Step 1 is the tour. So you get to the home on time, you knock on the door, ring the doorbell, and they answer, and you say, as soon as they open the door, they're going to say hi to you, and you say, hi, Jack and Jill. Hey, I'm Mike Cerrone with ABC Realty. Nice to meet you. All right, so we got our names out of the way real quick and reminding everybody who is who and why you're there, because sometimes they open the door and they forgot they set the meeting. Hopefully not, but it does happen. That's why you want to send them some reminders before you show up. All right, so once you're there, though, and they answer the door and everybody's smiling, and before I walk in, I say, hey, do you mind if I wear my shoes in your house? Is that okay? Because some people say, no, I want you taking your shoes off, and other people, hey, no, it doesn't matter, come on in. Either way, when I walk in, I'm going to wipe my feet on the mat, if they have a mat, If they want me to take my shoes off, I'm popping them off. If not, we're going to walk her in. And I'm going to say right away, I'm going to say, hey, do you mind giving me a tour of your home so I can see what you got here? And most people say, yeah. And then they may ask if you want to do it yourself or have them go along. And I'd say, oh, could you please show me your home? Okay, because I want to be next to them walking through the home. There's two purposes for that tour. One is to take notes on the property to see if there's anything you missed. And you're also kind of check, I guess maybe three, you're checking the condition of the home. Like, did they have an addition you didn't know about? Did they do something dramatic you didn't know about, like completely changing out a kitchen or a bathroom or something? Um, and then I'm also looking to create a connection with them. So I'm going to have some small talk as we're going. I'm smiling, they're smiling. I'm asking questions about, hey, what's happening here? Are you leaving that? Are you going to leave the curtains? Are you leaving the chandelier? Whatever they've got there, I'm going to ask those kind of questions, but I'm also dropping in, hey, cool, why are you thinking about moving and whatever. I'm going to just kind of keep I'm going to keep walking, but I'm dropping in conversation with them as we're going, okay? Then when I get done with that, I'm going to say, hey, can we sit at your kitchen table so I can share some information? If they have a kitchen table, great. If not, you can sit at the dining room table. I prefer to sit at the table so you can put papers out. I've done it where you sit on a couch. I've done that, but boy, it's tough, and everything's falling over and rolling. Your pins are rolling between their cushions. it can be a mess. So I will do it wherever. I'll do it on the floor. I've done vacant properties where I just sit on the floor and talk to them, but it's nice if they have a kitchen table, go there. It's where they meet for their family meetings typically. And so anyway, it's a good place to be. All right, that's step one, the tour. Step two is the agenda and motivation. I want to get out what we're going to accomplish in this meeting and find out remind me what their motivation is. So here we go. Hey, today we're going to talk about 5 things. 1, we're going to talk about how much your home is worth. 2, we're going to talk about how long it will take to sell. 3, we're going to talk about how much you're going to walk out of closing with. And then 4, we're going to talk about my plan of action for selling your home to get the most amount of money in the shortest time with the fewest hassles. And 5, we're going to talk about if we want to work together or not. Does that sound fair? All right, so I got it all out there. You'll notice this is pretty hot because it's what they do want to know. They want to know how much their home is worth. That's probably number 1 why you're there. Number 2, they want to know how long it's going to take. And if they don't know, if they didn't think about that, they immediately do want to know. Number 3 is critical. They want to know how much they're walking out of closing with, especially if they're going to have to buy another property. They want to know how much they should be expecting to come out of there, whether they're going to have to bring additional money for the new closing or not. If they're an investor, are they going to take this money and roll it in a 1031? Anyway, they want to know how much money they're walking out of closing with. Number 4 is the plan of action. And they're like, okay, yeah, I'm sure we want to know what you're going to do. They're not as curious about that. But then when you say to get the most amount of money, shortest amount of time, the fewest hassles, like, oh, well, tell me about that plan. Okay. And then we're going to find out if we want to work together or not. Okay. When you say, you got to say or not, because then they're like, oh, what do you mean not? Okay. That's what they're saying in their head. And as a strong agent, you may decide to turn this down. You want to keep that going. You never want to get in the position where you're begging for the listing. That weakens your position and the things that you say will come out wrong. All right. You're assessing them as well as they are assessing you. It is a job interview for you, but you're also interviewing them. You're trying to decide, do I want to work with these people? I have walked out of listings. I'm like, I'm probably not the right agent for you. Let me recommend somebody that I really don't like. I'm going to recommend that you talk to Johnny Jones. I mean, whatever. If your name's John Jones, sorry, but you get my point. All right. And then the very next thing I'm going to do after when I say sounds fair, they always say yes. Say, hey, cool. So I can match our strategy with your plans. When this home sells, where are you moving to? I want to do an open-ended again. I want to make sure I've got every bit of information right. And on the phone, I was only talking to one of them. Now I may be talking to 2 or more people. I want to make sure I know what the situation is here. So where are you moving to? When do you want to be there? What's important to you about being in X by X? Okay, so being in Charlotte by September. What's important to you about that? And then if it's a reload, if they're moving out of the area, I say, hey, do you have a real estate agent in X city to help you with the purchase of your new home? Okay, because then you could pick up a referral fee, and also if they're trying to make a single move, I actually had this happen a little bit back, where you want to make sure you're tagging in with this other agent, and that you got a strong agent on the other end, so you can make sure that their move is a simple, straight over move. Anyway, you got the point. All right, step number 3. We're already to step 3. Step 3 is price. So now we're going to transition. We're going to say, hey, let's do this. Let's talk about the value of your home, which is what they want to talk about. Hey, I emailed you some comparable sales. Did you have a chance to look at it? Half the people will have, half the people wouldn't. All right. Hey, the best way to value a home is to see what similar homes are selling for. As we go through these comps, keep in mind, now I've opened up my CMA now. Okay, I've opened up the comps. I like to keep my comps very simple, by the way. I love, at this point, I'm like on a one-line comp sheet, where in your MLS, you can print out where one line per property, just the summary information. Okay, that's where I've listed most of my properties off that sheet. You don't want to overcomplicate it. It's the other reason why you ask them to do the research on all the details they want to look at first. All right, so anyway, we popped that open. We got the CMA there, and asked if they had a chance to look at the comps. Hey, the best way to value your home is to see what similar homes are selling for. And as we go through these comps, keep in mind we have to sell this home twice. You're going to say, well, what do you mean? Hey, first we got to sell it to the buyer. And the buyer is going to be very emotional. Buying a home is an emotional experience, okay? So we got to sell that home to the buyer, but because they're emotional, they may or may not be making a reasonable offer. Right? They may be making an offer that's way low, a low bar, or they may actually be making a super high offer. We don't know what's going to be happening because they're making these emotional decisions. And that's why there's a second time we have to sell it. We got to sell it to the bank appraiser. If your buyer goes out and gets financing, which is the majority of buyers, that bank is going to send out an appraiser who is very cold and calculating. They're logical, they're detached. They're only going to be looking at the facts. Well, we got to sell it to that person. And that's what we're going to be focusing on when we look at our stats. Because if our stats are, if we price this home out of alignment with what is actually going on with the market, the appraiser is going to kill any deal we put together. So that's why we got to, does that make sense why we're going to look at the 2 different ways we have to sell this home? And then we say yes. Great. All right. So again, both have to approve this price before we can complete the sale. And now I'm going to just walk through it pretty topical, okay? And I've got in my printout, it's going to be grouped: actives, unders, and solds. And I say unders, that's the pendings under contract. So here we go. Here are the active homes. I'm going to be pointing down at the list. This is your competition. These are the buyers looking. These buyers, by the way, they're looking for the most features for the lowest price, just like you're going to be doing when you go out to buy your next home. They're looking for the biggest bang for the buck. Does that make sense? Good. And then we're going to go through and you're going to point out each one, and you're going to just say, hey, are you aware of this property on X123 Elm Street? Are you aware of this one at 456 Oak Street? And you're just going to go down the list, and the features and the price, just topical, like what's the square footage, what's the bed and bath, what's the price. And they're going to give their opinion. Yeah, I know that one. I don't know that one. I like what they did in there. I was surprised that they did this or that because they looked at the comps. Good. And you go to the next group. By the way, just getting the information out there. Hey, here are the pending sales. Okay, these are homeowners who have found a buyer. However, we don't know what they've negotiated or agreed to until it closes. So, but we do know that they found a buyer. And that's this property, and this property, boom. I like to keep it to 3 or less properties. And sometimes the market will dictate that as to what's going on. And I'll explain. Well, let me just go ahead and say in a minute, I'm going to tell you about solds. Sometimes you'll have a lot of solds. Let me put it a different way. You may have a lot of everything. You may have a lot of actives, unders, and solds. What I will do is not in my formal CMA, but I will print out on the side a list of everything that's going on in their area. All actives, all unders, all solds, and all price ranges, because they may ask about it. And you don't want to be caught off guard. So I'll have that list there that I can refer to, but it's not going to be in my CMA. Make sense? All right. Let's go now to the next section. I said, hey, here are the actives, here are the pendings, and I point, here are the sold properties. Now, these sellers have won the game. The bank appraiser and your bank appraiser, remember we got to sell the property twice. The bank appraiser will determine their opinion of the value of your home by selecting 3 properties within a 1-mile radius that have sold within the last 6 months that are the most similar to yours. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to look at the properties that are most similar to yours and figure out what do we think that appraiser is going to pick. Does that make sense? Cool. And we just walk through that, just give them the information. At the end, here's doing that, you say, hey, based on this information, what do you want to price your home at? And then you be quiet. By the way, all questions, you always just be quiet, let them talk. The first person who talks, oh, well, I'll come to that later. Anyway, you want them to talk. And so you're going to ask them, hey, what do you want to price your home at? And some of them will say, they'll say, I want to price it at X. And great. If it was in the range and you realize it's in the range, go, great. Now, if you think it's low, I would tell them, I'd say, I think that's a great idea. However, I think you should price a little higher. I think this is why. Believe it or not, that happens. Oftentimes, though, they're priced really high. You got to say, okay, great. If you price at that, and you go back to the actors, you say, can you understand, can appreciate that if you price here, you may be helping these other people sell their home before yours. And you say, what do you mean? Well, buyers are going to look at your home at X plus, and they're going to look at these other homes at just X. And if the buyer's trying to get the best deal, which one would you pick? Okay. And you're trying to bring them back in alignment. Pricing can be one of these challenging things. That's another way to handle that. You want them to get to the answer, though. You want them to price the home. Do not tell them what the price is. That's a big mistake. Because if you say, hey, look, this home is worth $952,000, $952,000. I don't know if I said that right. This home is worth $952,000. And I am confident that's what's going to be. And then you get on the market and 30 days later, it's not sold. They're going to be like, you told us 952, because you're going to be going back to them saying, well, we need to change this price. Say, no, you said the price was 952. You kind of backed yourself into a corner. So you want them to make the decision. And that's why, let me go back to the question, which is based on this information, what do you want to price your home at? Oftentimes they're going to say, well, you tell us. That's why we brought you over here. And here's my response. I could do that, but I've discovered that it's more important for you to pick the price. So you have to make the decision because it affects when the home is going to sell and for how much. May I explain? Now they're curious. If you price this home too high, if you price it way above all these other properties, it could take a long time to sell. Now, you can sell any property at any price if you take a long enough period of time. I'll come back to that. But it could take a very long time for you to sell at that price, or maybe not at all. And what I mean is not in the immediate future. But if you price too low, you're going to sell this home really fast, but you might not maximize your price. You may leave some money on the table. And that's why you have to decide, based on looking at all this material, where do you want to price this home? What is most important to you? Achieving the absolute highest price or selling in the shortest amount of time? Which of those is more important? Okay, because they're going to say things like, I will do whatever it takes to get the most money. And other people are going to say, I have to be in Jackson, Mississippi by X date. Okay, then we need to do this, that, or the other, right? Now you have a place to go. They have to decide. I try to keep giving them information, though, because they may say, well, I don't understand what you mean by this price and time. I said, well, let me give you a dramatic example. I call this my 10M versus 1. Okay. I say to him, look, let me ask you a question. If you price this property, you can sell this home at a lot of different prices. Let's say you price this home at $1. $1. How fast is it going to sell? They're like, it's going to sell. I would never do that. I know you would never do that. But if you priced it at $1, how fast would it sell? If it sold in half a second? Yes, you're right. It would sell in half a second at $1. So I like to use exaggeration. Let me go the other direction. Let's say their home is worth $500,000. Say, hey, if we price this home at $10 million, will it sell? And they said, well, no, it wouldn't sell. I said, actually, it will sell for $10 million. However, it may take us a very long time to get 10 million. What I mean is, through inflation, your property will be growing and doubling and whatever over decades. And so maybe in 50 years or 100 years or 200 years, this property could sell for 10 million. Could you appreciate that? And they'll say, oh, okay, well, I understand. You mean really far out. Yeah, really far out. Yeah, well, that's my point. Price and time are correlated. So the higher the price, the longer it takes. The lower the price, the quicker it's going to sell. Does that make sense? Yeah, that's why you got to pick the price. Oftentimes, they'll come to the price right there, and they'll be within a good range, and you can say, great. If they don't, if they're still struggling on this, that's where I say this. I say, hey, let me help you out just a little bit. Here is a range of value that appears to be happening right now. Again, I'm not giving an absolute price. I'm like, it appears that right now in the market, the low end is X and the high end is Y. Where in that range do you want to price your home? So now I've helped them narrow it down from $1 to 10 million. I narrowed it down, back down into reality, and they're usually able to pick a number. They pretty much had a number before you showed up. All right. Say, great. That sounds fantastic. Once they come to a conclusion and it makes sense to you, we're ready to move forward. And by the way, I would confirm it with them by saying, hey, great, I think that's an excellent choice. And then we're going to move on to step number 4, which is days in the market, DIM, or days on the market, DOM. It used to be DOM, and now a lot of MLSs are doing DIM. Whatever yours is, that's what you should talk about. So I say, hey, let's do this. Let's now talk about how long it's going to take to sell this home. I'd like to talk to you about days in the market, which is the time between when you first put your home on the market, when you first put it into the MLS, and when you've accepted an offer. Okay, that is the time we're talking about with DIM. And right now, and now I'm going to go into details. In the overall market, the DIM is blank days. Okay, so let's say that we've been having a pretty fast market, although it's slowed down. So I said, hey, the overall DIM is 13 days. 13 days. I go, okay. And I go, and then in your neighborhood, though, it's blank. And we'll go point into the neighborhood, because that little printout I have with the single line properties, it'll have the DIM, the days on the market. See if yours does. And I'll just point out, look, this one sold in 3 days, this one sold in 21 days, this one sold in 6 months. I mean, whatever it is, do. And that's what's going on right now in your neighborhood. Does that make sense? Yes, great. By the way, it's real important to do that, because the averages, their neighborhood could be completely different. Like if they're super high end, they may be a lot slower. If they're super low end or a super attractive price or area, it may be going a lot faster. So that's why you go to the neighborhood too. Hey, another helpful metric is the showings per offer, or the SPO. I say, well, what's that? Well, this is how many showings on average it's taking in order for an agent to, in order for a property to get to a contract. So in the overall market, the SPO is, and you have to do the research, by the way, on both these numbers, the overall market is showing 9 showings per offer. So if there are 9 showings that occur, on average, you're going to get an offer. Does that make sense? Cool. With this information, so this is the summary I'm trying to bring them to. So you should get an offer on your home within 13 days or 9 showings, whichever occurs first. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So if that does not happen, then the market did not like our price and we need to make an adjustment. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Well, I'm going to be monitoring this for you, and I'm going to share it in our weekly reports. I'm going to call you up once a week. I'm going to call you on Tuesday. It's going to be usually in the morning, might be the afternoon, but I'm going to let you know what's going on with your property. Okay. Does that sound good? Okay, cool. And so remind me, when do you need to be moved? And they're going to tell me. I'm going to go, okay, great. So, and now I've reconfirmed that we've got this time element that has to go into the equation. Now, why did I go through all that? Because I'm projecting out. I know that looking backwards after we're into this thing, I'm going to be talking to them once a week. And one of the things we're going to be talking about is how long it's taken to sell their home. They're going to ask you, why isn't my home sold? You're going to say, well, remember we talked at the beginning, you needed to have at least 13 days. It's only been 2 days. Or you're going to say, yeah, remember in the beginning we said take 13 days on the average, and we're now sitting at 31 days. That's a little longer, isn't it? Or they're gonna say, why is my home selling? Say, well, we've only had 2 showings, and then typically takes 9, so we need to get a couple more showings going. Or you can, if the opposite tree, say, we've had 38 showings and nobody's made an offer, and on average it takes 9. I think we need to make an adjustment. So you're able to bring those numbers back in later on. Okay. And if they say, where'd you get those numbers? Say, remember we talked about them at the very beginning. All right. Anyway, that's why we're going to go through days on the market, how long, or days in the market, how long it takes to get this property sold, create those expectations properly with what's going on in the market. Now we're going to go to step 5, which is the net sheet. And I'm going to say, hey, now let's talk about how much you're going to walk out of closing with. And people love this part. And I'm going to take the net sheet and I'm going to show it to them. I've already prepared a net sheet. By the way, in my net sheet, I show 3 different options. I show the range of those values. Okay, I'm going to show the low end, the high end, and something in the middle as far as my pricing. And I'm going to show the expenses associated with all those, including paying off their mortgage. All right, so I present that to them. I say, hey, look, based on the comps, the value range is X to X. And by the way, I'm just going to point, and I'm going to do a high-level view first. I'm going to say, so based on the comps, the value of your range is here to here. And you chose right here because they've usually already picked a price. I said, that's a good idea. See, it's in the range. Here are the seller costs associated with this sale. And I'm just going to point to it. I'm going to say this includes paying off your mortgage. Now, I'm going to move down my finger to the bottom of the list and say, and I'm going to point out the bottom and say, okay, at this price point, you're going to walk out of closing with this much. And I'm going to show the lowest number first. You're going to walk out with this much money. Is that enough money to help you make this move? And they're either going to say yes or no. Typically, they say yes. Say, great, we're in great shape because that was the low end. If you sell for that, that's kind of where you should end up. But remember, if you sell at the price you picked, you're going to get X amount more. Does that sound cool? Great, let's go for it. And then we're just going to move on. Now, sometimes they're going to want to go into the details. And if they do, great. We'll go into those details and go line item by line item. It's already there. We could talk about each one. They say, why is that there? Why is that there? That's usually a C personality if you know your disc. If it's a D personality, they're already done with this whole thing. And if it's an S, they're going to probably follow along with whichever direction you go. And if it's an I, they're going to talk, they may talk about whatever. What happened to the neighbor down the street is probably what the I is going to talk about. In any event, that's what's going to go on. You're going to get down to, hey, is this enough to make your move? If they say yes, you're done. If they say no, you chat. And if they want to discuss any line items, you go into it. All right, so that's it. That's a net sheet. But I have now got it out there. A lot of agents don't do net sheets. I think it's a huge mistake because then when you get to the end, they're all surprised and shocked. And where these numbers come from? Well, we talked about it all the way back at the beginning. All right. Now we got step number 6 is the marketing plan. So I say, hey, now let's talk about the marketing plan of action, and you show them your plan. This is how we're going to sell your home for the most money in the shortest time with the fewest hassles. Now, I emailed this plan to you before we got to our meeting. Did you have a chance to review it? So now I'm trying to make this happen a little faster. If they reviewed it, awesome. I say, great, thanks for doing that. Now, if they haven't, I say, great, let's walk through it. And then once one of those answers is done, I say, hey, do you feel confident that this plan will get your home sold for the most money in the shortest time with the fewest hassles? They say yes, boom, we're in great shape, we're moving forward. Now, if they say no for some reason, which they typically don't, but if they said no, you say, well, good. Why do you think that that's true? And then we're going to go into that. Remember, just stay in curiosity the whole time. You're going to be fine. You'll know what question to ask. And now we're already down to step 7, and that's the decision. So once they say, yeah, they believe that the plan is going to work, you say, hey, now it's decision time. Based on our meeting, I feel confident that I can get your home sold. Are you ready to put me to work? And then you have to be quiet. Don't say anything. Because the first person that talks is going to lose. If you interrupt and say something at this point, you're pretty much going to be shooting yourself in the foot and not getting the listing. Almost guarantee it. You have to let them mentally process and give you an answer. Because if they say yes, you're done and you're moving into the paperwork. Okay. If they say no, then you're going to say, oh, well, tell me how come. Okay. Just be curious. If they say maybe or they ask a question, you're going to reply to the question. And then after you respond to it, you're going to say, oh, cool. Are you ready to put me to work now? Good. One more thing. If they keep talking to you, they probably want to hire you. So just get that question out there. Ask what you want. Okay. I'll give you a bonus right now. If you get to this point and they say, we need to think about it. Great. Let me ask you, what do you need to think about? Do you need to go through the 5? Okay. Do you need to think about the price? No, that looks good. Do you need to think about how long it's going to take? No, we understand that. Do you need to think about how much you're going to walk out of closing with? No, that looked good. Do you need to think about the marketing plan? No. Okay. If they had said yes to any of those, you would answer them. But if you get there and they say no and they're happy with everything, here's a trick. It's a high-level trick. You say, hey, you know what, Jack and Jill, let me just give you a second here. I got something in my car I got to get for you. I think I left it in there. It's another marketing piece. You guys sit here for a second and chat. I'm going to be right back. And you walk out. It's crazy, isn't it? Well, you walk out to your car, and I want you to stay there for about 3 to 5 minutes. Okay? Looking through your trunk, looking through your car, pretend you're looking for something, whatever. Get on your phone if you want to. Just stay out there for about 3 to 5 minutes. Come back in and say, oh, yeah, I couldn't find whatever. Or if you actually had something there, you bring it back in. Oh, I found it. Oftentimes what's going to happen is the sellers are going to say, Mike, we've decided to hire you. You're like, wow, that's incredible. Why? What you'll find out is they had to chat. They just needed to confirm with each other without you there that they wanted to hire you. They just needed to turn each other, if it's 2 people, they needed to turn each other and say, do you want to hire this person? Yeah. Do you want to hire this person? Yeah. Boom. Okay, boom. It doesn't take long. But with you there, they can't turn each other and make a little private conversation. So that's why this is like an extra tip, an extra high-level bonus for you. All right. So we have now walked through the 7-step listing process. I hope this has been super helpful for you. If it has, go ahead and give us the thumbs up. And if it has not, go ahead and give us thumbs down. If you like what we're doing and you want to join us on the journey, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions about what we talked about, go ahead and put them down in the comment section. For instance, let me tell you that this process has worked to list a bajillion properties. I've sold almost 1,000 properties in my career. I took 21 listings in 30 days. It was all following this process. All right, so I'm pretty confident that it'll work, but the question is, are you confident it'll work? Like, have you used this kind of structure? Let me know in the comments. Have you used this kind of structure? Did it work? Did it not work? What have you been doing? Have you just been winging it, or did you use a different structure that works better? Let me know down in those comments below. I'd really like to know. All right, hopefully this has been helpful for you. Thanks again for joining us. on our process, on our experiment to get 2 listings per month. All right, take care. Bye now.